And all of this, of course, gives US President Donald Trump a huge lever in the upcoming talks, a lever to pressure Putin at the negotiations set to take place in Alaska on the 15th. Last night, it was announced that the talks with a Russian representative would indeed be held in that US state, and immediately there were all kinds of comments about the choice of venue. Some people began saying that Putin had managed to wangle himself an invitation to the United States even as he wages a criminal invasion of Europe, another European country, committing war crimes. And now the American president will receive him in America, meaning Putin got exactly what he wanted. Others object to that. No, they say, it wasn't Putin who achieved an invitation to America. It was Trump who summoned him, snapped his fingers, and Putin, tail between his legs, came running. Trump will be on home turf during these talks, and as the host, he'll be able to dress Putin down the way he once tried to dress down Zelensky in the White House. Remember, when someone said he wasn't wearing a suit jacket and was ungrateful and so on. I think these two positions don't really correlate with each other, but in principle, one of them could turn out to be right. It would be amusing to watch Trump rip into Putin over a poorly chosen tie or something along those lines. Nevertheless, the debate continues because the first group says this is Putin's victory. He broke through a diplomatic blockade, managed to come to the very center of the free world, the United States, and they say credit is due to Putin's diplomatic talents for achieving this. The others say no. Trump knows nothing about diplomacy. He's a bore. That's not his thing. So it's not correct to claim Trump extended some diplomatic courtesy to Putin. Trump doesn't even know what a diplomatic courtesy is. And then there's another crowd saying the choice of Alaska means they're preparing Putin for selling off ancestral Russian land to Americans, like what happened in the 19th century with Alaska when the territory was sold for practically symbolic money. And there is also John Bolton, Trump's former national security advisor, now in opposition to the current US president. Bolton said the choice of Alaska suggests that, from Putin's point of view, he's coming home because Putin considers Alaska to be Russian too and will likely want it as well, and therefore he should never have been allowed to go to Alaska because he'll come, plant a Russian flag there, and you won't be able to get him out. I think Bolton is exaggerating. I don't believe little green men will land with Putin and start seizing military facilities in Alaska. That would be a bit much. In general, there's no consensus about the symbolism of choosing Alaska as the venue. But I think that's not really what matters. What matters far more is what they will actually discuss. It's clear that Putin will demand the return, handing over of the parts of Ukraine not yet captured, specifically the entirety of the Zaporizhia, Donetsk, Luhansk, and Kherson regions. First and foremost, of course, he wants Kramatorsk and Sloviansk, the agglomeration that is, in essence, a bastion and capital of Ukraine in the Donetsk region, and which, by its very existence and successful life, challenges Donetsk, which is now withering and dying from a lack of water, from people leaving, from corruption, filth, and everything knee-deep. And the gleaming Kramatorsk and Sloviansk, perhaps I'm exaggerating a bit. Nevertheless, functioning Sloviansk and Kramatorsk are like a thorn in Putin's side. He wants to wipe them off the face of the earth and ensure they cease to exist, especially in a Ukrainian context, so they are no longer Ukrainian cities. As ruins or as Russian cities, fine, let them exist. But as Ukrainian cities, he simply hates them because by their very existence they prove that Putin's so-called liberation of Donbass is a fiction, a sham, plain old-fashioned territorial seizure. And Putin won't stop at Sloviansk and Kramatorsk, he'll want everything. To achieve this, he'll try to recruit Trump, so to speak, charm him somehow, pull him to his side. In my view, that may be even more important than territory. It's a struggle for the favor of the US president. I think Putin believes that if he can win back Trump's goodwill, then using that goodwill, in the longer term, he'll be able to grab Not only Sloviansk and Kramatorsk, not only the four regions illegally written into the Russian constitution, but all of Ukraine. I think Putin will work precisely to ingratiate himself with Trump, befriend him, hug him, press him to his chest. What Trump will say to all this, we don't yet know. Frankly, I don't think Trump himself knows. He's unpredictable with 7 Fridays a week, constantly changing his mind. Some say he doesn't care how much Ukrainian land is handed to Putin. He'll give up whatever Putin demands just to tick the ceasefire box and then try to force that pre-made decision through Ukraine, pressuring Volodymyr Zelensky to accept it. Others say no, he understands it won't work with Ukraine and that pressure needs to be applied to Putin himself towards something realistic like freezing the war along the current front line. I think that's fairly realistic, a starting point one could build from. Ukraine's president is clearly very wary right now. Today, Volodymyr Zelensky made a statement, released a video address, making it clear that Ukrainian territories and people will not simply be handed over. For my part, I lean towards the second position. Trump understands you can't just throw around someone else's territory, and that doing so would end badly. I think it took Trump a long time to realize that without substantial pressure on Putin, he won't achieve anything, no peace deal. Initially, he didn't want to pressure Putin and had no intention to. He wasn't interested. But over the last 6 months, he's gone through a long evolution and has come to the conclusion that he will, in fact, have to pressure Putin. And we've already seen the first episode of such pressure, the tariffs against India for purchasing Russian oil. In this context, I think it's fair to say that a personal meeting between Trump and Putin is needed by Trump precisely to put pressure on Putin, face to face, taking advantage of home field conditions, as they say in football. For the pressure to be effective, first, Russia's economic situation must be difficult. It is difficult, as you've just been describing. It's really bad. The Russian economy is in a very tough spot, one that is hard to escape without lifting sanctions. Because it must be said, if sanctions on Russia were lifted, Russia could borrow the missing money on external markets and resume selling its oil and gas to Europe, quickly rebuilding its financial cushion, paying debts, and covering the budget deficit. So there is a path to salvation for Russia lifting sanctions. Only Donald Trump, it is thought, can deliver that, which is why Putin is coming. That's what he wants. And Trump, in exchange for lifting sanctions, can of course demand many other things from Russia. And the economic situation, as I said, needs to be difficult for Putin to yield to American pressure. Frankly, it looks almost insoluble because Putin hates yielding to pressure, but there is still a chance it could work. Look, any ceasefire that gives Russia some Ukrainian territory but leaves Ukraine's armed forces intact is a defeat for the Russian Federation in this war. The rout of Ukraine, the so-called demilitarization, did not happen. The change of government in Ukraine to a pro-Russian one, the so-called denazification, also did not happen. The two goals Putin announced on the day of the full-scale invasion were not achieved, period. And the main goal, never publicly stated but obvious to all, complete destruction of the Ukrainian state and erasure of the Ukrainian national identity, has failed all the more. The Ukrainian state has strengthened, become more robust and powerful. The identity of its people, no need to elaborate, is now hardened forever by fire, blood, pain, suffering, bravery, and heroism. What has the Russian army gained in this war? Fields littered with rusty, charred metal, mines, corpses, piles of broken brick and concrete where cities and villages once stood, a water-starved, rapidly dying Donbass, and more than 1 million victims. That is the sum of the Russian army's achievements. The one thing Putin can claim as an asset is a land corridor to Crimea. Yes, he got that, but he will have to give even that up in the medium term, when Putin dies, or when power changes in Russia, or even simply when the current regime weakens enough. It should also be said that the chief base of support for the Russian regime will erupt in outrage if such a ceasefire with Ukraine is signed. They want a march to the English Channel, or at least to Odessa and Kiev. Seizing Odessa and Kiev is their minimum program. If that doesn't happen, they'll feel betrayed. From what I read in their channels, they see everything that's happening now as a looming betrayal of the motherland with a capital M. And here, I honestly don't understand how Putin could agree to such a betrayal. He will surely feel it as a betrayal himself. Agreeing to it would be akin to consenting to a new military mutiny like Prigozhin's March for Justice. The army could slip from his control. Some patriotic general or colonel could seize power, and almost everyone would support him. It's a terrifying scenario for Putin, but he has no other options left. It seems it's either a ceasefire on Trump's terms or a rapid depletion of Russia and a bloody fading of Putin's rule in the near future. And Trump does have leverage over Putin. If Putin refuses Trump's proposals, Ukraine could receive long-range missiles to strike Moscow, and Russia could face a de facto ban on selling its oil. These two factors could very quickly and effectively cripple the Russian army and economy, and ultimately undermine Putin's power as well. I think such a threat could work because the one thing Putin truly fears is losing power. For Ukraine, of course, it remains important to make it crystal clear to the Americans that Russia might manage to maintain control over some territories it has already seized, but it will not get anything new without a fight. In my view, that must be Ukraine's absolutely principled position. Again, I'm not the one deciding, just stating my opinion. And here's what I want to say. For now, it's still August. August has traditionally not been a very good month for Russia, so I do have some hope for a good outcome to this process. And since the front line could de facto become a border soon, it's important that over the next few days, Ukraine not yield key positions and settlements, such as Pokrovsk. That's why I invite you to contribute to a fundraiser for a Matrice 4T reconnaissance drone. These are night-capable drones that will help the Ukrainian army, and in particular the 46th Air Mobile Brigade of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, hold the line around Pokrovsk.